This is TLV1.
The Tel Aviv Review.
Hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review. I'm your host, Gilad Halpern. This is a special extra episode for loyal subscribers on Patreon. And as always, we cannot thank you enough. My guest today is an assistant professor of Middle East politics at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. He has a brand new book out, great timing, as always, Iran and the Bomb, the United States, Iran and the Nuclear Question. It was just published by IB Tauris. Dr. Sina Azodi, hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review.
Hello, and good to be with you, Gilad.
So to what extent would you say that there's really a distinction between a bomb and nuclear capabilities? In the Iranian case, but also beyond, in principle, is there really a way to discuss a nuclear program without thinking about a bomb as the endgame?
It is the dual nature of nuclear technology that makes it sensitive to everybody, meaning that nuclear capability by itself or enrichment by itself doesn't mean nuclear weapons. And this is something that a lot of people are confused about, especially because of the politicized use of these words. For example, President Trump says Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. But in reality, his demand from Iran is zero enrichment. And these two things are not the same thing, completely different. So when a country has nuclear capability, it can mean so many things. Does that country have the industrial knowledge, technological know-how of producing nuclear weapons? Yes or no? Or it could also mean that that country simply has nuclear power plants. The issue here is that, as I said, the dual nature of nuclear programs, meaning that if a country has the uranium enrichment capacity or plutonium reprocessing capacity, it can theoretically produce nuclear weapons because it is most of the hurdle of producing nuclear weapons. But that doesn't mean that they have nuclear weapons. Germany can enrich uranium. Japan can enrich uranium. Do they have nuclear weapons? The answer is no. Iran can enrich uranium. Does it have nuclear weapons? The answer is still, at the time we were talking, the answer is no. So having nuclear capability, having nuclear enrichment or plutonium reprocessing is not equal to having nuclear weapons.
Okay, but let's talk about countries not like Germany and Japan, but about like Iran and perhaps others as well. I mean, is there any way or any justification for uranium enrichment that would not lead to military capabilities at the end?
It is all about political will and security drivers of that particular case that we're discussing. Security is usually, has historically been the most prevalent case or the driver behind nuclear weapons, right? Now, when Iranians started enrichment project for a number of reasons. They started it during the Iran-Iraq war. And in fact, actually, let me go back a little further. By 1975, 1976, the nuclear chief of the Shah, Dr. Akbar Etemad, who passed away in 2025, he announced that Iran planned to have uranium enrichment by mid-1980s. And yet the Shah fell in 1979. It stopped. But by 1987, Iranians restarted that, let's say, quest for uranium enrichment. Now, this time they had different reasons for it. They were at the war with Iraq. Chemical weapons were being used. They were very concerned about Iraq's nuclear weapons program. The Iranian scientists that I've interviewed in the book, they told me that because Iraq was using chemical weapons and nobody said anything to them, and at the same time they have a nuclear weapons program, They thought that if Iraq uses a nuclear weapon against Iran, nobody will say anything. And the only way was to match that serious threat that they were facing. But there was also another issue behind it. And that was the fact that the European companies that had taken Iran's money to deliver nuclear fuel to them wouldn't do it. They would bring different excuses, and I can get into the details of it, of why they wouldn't deliver it, and they wouldn't even refund the money. So the Iranian thinking back then was, well, we either have to say goodbye to all the investments that we've made in our nuclear program, or try to do it ourselves, which they did, and ultimately they succeeded to enrich uranium.
But let's go back to the origins for a second. You know, back to the days of the Shah. There was this, well, at the time it seemed like almost an invincible empire in the Middle East, supported and pampered by the West, chiefly the United States. Why did he need a nuclear enrichment program in the first place?
Well, he didn't start so Iran's nuclear program under the Shah never started enrichment. But by 1950s, when the Eisenhower administration gave that nuclear program to Iran, as one Iranian scientist told me, like a chocolate chip cookie, the Shah just wanted to show off that we, as Iranians, this great empire with this great civilization, we have a nuclear program, whereas other countries in the Middle East don't have it, right? So he just wanted to show off, really. But because the country was not developed enough, it didn't have the skilled manpower, it didn't have the capacity to generate enough electricity, the program remained very limited, right? It signed the NPT in 1968. It signed the Partial Test Ban Treaty in 1967. Maybe I'm getting the year wrong, but that period. But really, they didn't know what they wanted to do with the program. It was only in mid-1970s, late 1970s, that you have a massive program, thanks to the money that Iran received from the oil revenues, that Iranians started signing very expensive contracts with the Europeans, with the French, with the Germans, West Germany. But the problem was they couldn't sign an agreement with the United States, ironically, because the American side were asking Iran to sign documents that would give the US the veto power over the waste fuel of these reactors, and Iranians would say, we will not do this because this is a violation of our sovereignty. This is beyond the NPT requirements. We're not going to do it.
Why did the Americans make that demand?
Their concern was, and based on the records that I've seen, is that Kissinger, for example, his concern was not that Iran will cheat, but the precedent that it would leave on the international stage, and other countries would come and demand the same rights, the same arrangements in nuclear agreements. And Iranians would say, this is your problem, this is your domestic problem, it's not our problem. And when President Ford actually asked the Shah to show flexibility on the issue of the plutonium reprocessing, the Shah writes a letter back and says, I'm sorry, but may I remind you about the dual purpose of the NPT, that is for all countries to enjoy the benefits of nuclear program and stopping the proliferation, right? So there was a lot of back and forth between Iranians and Americans, to the point that Iranians were getting angry at the United States, and there was a lot of friction between the Iranian side and the American side. Ironically, we're seeing the same exact thing today, where Iran and the US are at loggerheads over Iran's rights under the NPT.
Yeah, no, it's really funny that the Islamic Revolution was like a denial of everything that the Shah had stood for. But here we see this ironic continuity.
And that's the main point of my book, that yes, there was a revolution in 1979, but Iran's nuclear program and its drivers have largely been unaffected by that revolution, because the drivers haven't changed.
Mm-hmm. So the symbolic power of having this nuclear capacity, that's one.
So modernization is one of it. The Shah wanted to show off his nuclear program as a symbol of Iran's westernization, which for him was synonymous with modernization, right? So he thought that a modernized Iran is a westernized Iran. When the Islamic Republic came in, it reframed the program as a symbol of Iran's independence, ability to stand on its feet, and often Iranian leadership, including Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, Rouhani, Khamenei, all these high-ranking officials, they compare it with Iran's oil nationalization, that this is our capacity to stand on our feet, this is a sovereign right, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so before we move into the Iran-Iraq war in more detail, because it's really a key
That's a turning
moment.
point.
Yeah, I want to talk a bit about the revolution itself. So you laid out the scene in the latter years of the Shah's reign, and this sort of little acrimonious exchange with Kissinger and the Americans. Okay, then the Shah is removed. The Khomeini and the Islamists come in. Then there's this limited nuclear program. How do they treat it? Well, how do they see it?
One thing I didn't mention was that I've seen documents, 3 different separate documents in a Carter library that point out to the Shah's efforts to produce nuclear weapons. There was an intelligence memorandum to the late Joseph Nye that Iran is working on nuclear weapons. And so I reached out to Joseph Nye.
Before the revolution.
Before the revolution, 1978, before the revolution. So I reached out to Joseph Nye. I asked him if he remembered that memorandum. And he said, yes, we had intelligence, credible intelligence, that a group of Iranian officers under the directorship of a general, he said, I don't remember the name, but the general was in charge of the project. They were working on nuclear weapons. It's very interesting. And so revolution happens. Everybody, the media, the leadership, they try to distance themselves from the Shah's nuclear program because everything that the Shah had done was bad. With the aim of subjugating Iran to the Western domination. Khomeini said that we're going to use the unfinished nuclear reactors as wheat silos, and they put a geologist in charge of the AEOI, which hated the program. And you have Iranian media repeatedly attacking the Shah's investments in the program.
This is a message to you, our most loyal listeners. We will be offering special Tel Aviv Review episodes, usually with a stronger connection to the current news cycle, episodes that are exclusive to Patreon subscribers. Without the ongoing support of our patrons, many of whom really have been with us for months and years, we simply would not be able to sustain the podcast. All patrons will have access to these special episodes, and they can be set up to show directly in Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Support the show by becoming a patron at Patreon. That's patreon.com/Tel Aviv Review, all in one word.